My name is Elena Whitford, and I remember the exact moment my name disappeared. It happened in a sunlit room at Whitford Hall. Our family estate nestled behind iron gates, where the scent of lavender mixed with betrayal long before I ever noticed I was pouring tea for my father, a simple gesture, one I'd done since I was 13 when mother died and left behind nothing but silence and unfinished lullabies. That day he looked tired, not sick tired, the kind of tired you don't sleep off. His hands, once firm and calloused from decades of building the Whitford name, trembled just slightly as he reached for the cup. And in a voice that barely rose above the tick of the grandfather clock, he said, "Elena, everything I built, it's meant for you." I believed him. Of course I did. I was the daughter who stayed, the one who skipped parties to sit through board meetings, the one who learned how to read a balance sheet before she learned how to drive. But 2 weeks later, at the reading of the will, my name wasn't there. Not even once. Vivian's was Vivian, my younger sister with her diamond smile and perfume-laced apologies. The one who skipped holidays, who vanished for months only to show up in designer heels and stories about yacht parties and lovers with foreign accents. She wasn't raised on duty. She was raised on charm, and somehow charm won. The lawyer, Mr. Alden, cleared his throat and said, "The estate investments, personal holdings, and 32% of Whitford Enterprises will go to Vivian Montgomery, not Whitford." She'd married Alex Montgomery just 3 months ago into a name that bled old money and a tech company hanging on by a thread. She married into a dynasty, but now she was claiming mine. I didn't say a word during the reading. I couldn't. My throat locked. My eyes scanned the pages of that will, like maybe my name had been typed in invisible ink, like maybe this was all just a cruel formality, and they'd hand me a secret envelope after the room emptied, but it never came. Vivian smiled at me as she walked out. Not an apology, not regret, just satisfaction. Like she had finally done what she was born to do, outshine, outplay, outmaneuver. She loved him best, she once whispered to me after a charity gala, the scent of champagne heavy on her breath. And I made sure he remembered it. At the time I thought it was drunken nonsense. Now I knew better. Vivian didn't just steal my place, she rewrote history. She told lies, manipulated our father during the final months of his life. Months when he was so exhausted, so riddled with medication and grief, that he trusted the wrong voice, whispering in his ear. She painted me as unfit emotionally, unstable, resentful. Said I didn't want the burden of legacy, said I was planning to sell everything. And he believed her. It was like watching my entire life vanish in slow motion. The home where I grew up, the company I sacrificed relationships for the vineyard he promised would be mine. Gone. All handed over to someone who'd only ever shown up when cameras were rolling. I moved out of Whitford Hall that same evening. I didn't wait for a conversation. There was nothing left to discuss, not when the portrait of my mother had already been replaced by a glossy painting of Vivian and Alex framed in gold, hanging smugly in the foyer like a trophy. I packed one suitcase, left the rest. No one stopped me. Not the staff I once called family, not Vivian, who was too busy posing in her new silk robe, giving instructions to redecorate the library. And certainly not Alex, who barely looked up from his phone as I walked past him in the hallway. Outside, the driveway was lined with lanterns. I remember that. The air smelled of honeysuckle. It should have been beautiful, but all I could see was the shadow of everything I had lost. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I didn't even call my friends. Because the truth is, I had none left. Not really. Vivian made sure of that long ago. She poisoned the well, drop by drop, slowly making me the cold one, the difficult one. And I let her. I was too busy being dutiful to be likable. But what she didn't count on, what none of them did, was that I don't vanish. I observe, I record, I remember. And now I had nothing left to protect. No name, no inheritance, no legacy. But I had time, and time was all I needed. That night I checked into a tiny apartment on the edge of the city, one bedroom, barely furnished, the kind of place where silence echoes. I sat on the floor, opened my laptop, and did the one thing Vivian never bothered to learn: how to do research. I looked into Montgomery Tech, the company Alex had inherited from his father but never managed to lead. Stocks had plummeted over the last 2 quarters, rumors of data leaks, lawsuits pending. A few silent investors had already pulled out. Vivian hadn't married into power, she'd married into a sinking ship, and that ironically made it vulnerable. As I stared at the glowing screen, watching ticker symbols blink like Morse code, I made a promise I wouldn't fight Vivian for Whitford Hall, or the will, or even our father's name. No, she could keep the house because I would take the empire she thought she was securing. She stole my future so I would hijack hers. Quietly, patiently, precisely, not with revenge. With strategy. They didn't just erase my name from the will, they erased it from the story, a week after I left Whitford Hall. The Society column ran a full-page spread: Vivian Montgomery inherits Whitford dynasty, A new era begins. My name wasn't mentioned once, not as a daughter, not as a founder, not even as a footnote. I read it in a laundromat. The hum of old washing machines droned in the background as I stared at her photo, Vivian dressed in dove-gray silk, fingers gently placed on Alex's arm, eyes angled just enough to suggest both warmth and dominion. The headline may as well have read, "The crown has been passed, long live the pretender people." I once mentored junior partners, consultants, analysts, sent her flowers and congratulations. One even tweeted, "No one more deserving than Vivian. She's always been the soul of Whitford, the soul." Vivian hadn't stepped foot in the company until 6 months ago. She couldn't read a quarterly report without color-coded notes someone else prepared, but she had something I never did. Perfect timing and no shame. The story that circulated was that I had stepped down, that I had chosen to walk away from the legacy to pursue a quieter life, and no one questioned it. Because why would they? Vivian made sure the world saw me as the cold one, the difficult daughter, the woman who couldn't handle pressure, who lacked vision. She had planted those seeds years ago. Now she was harvesting. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't give her the satisfaction. But behind closed doors in the dim light of a rented studio with peeling paint and a mattress on the floor, I started mapping everything. Names, dates, connections. I downloaded company filings, traced silent partners, and set alerts on every financial move Montgomery Tech made. Because Vivian had married into that company for power, and power leaves fingerprints. 3 weeks later, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Noah Chambers. He was the CFO of Montgomery Tech before Alex forced him out. We hadn't spoken since a shareholder dinner 5 years ago when I told him his forecasting model was elegant but overly optimistic. He respected me after that, probably because I was the only one who told him the truth. "Elena," he said, his voice cautious, like I might hang up. "I heard what happened. I just wanted you to know. I believe you." I didn't ask what he meant. "If you have to ask, it's already too late," he continued. "Alex is bleeding the company dry. They're calling it restructuring. But it's a purge, legals buried in NDAs, R&D hasn't been paid in weeks. And Vivian," he paused, "she's hosting gala dinners with venture capitalists while the servers are crashing." I almost laughed. Of course she was. I asked him one question, "What's the burn rate?" He told me. And that's when I knew Vivian hadn't won anything. She'd inherited a house of cards, and now I would be the win. The first move was small A micro investment into one of Montgomery Tech's old vendors acquired through a holding firm under a different name. Then another into a rival logistics startup developing patent-adjacent systems. I used Silent Partners, LLC's shell layers, so thick even Alex wouldn't trace the pattern unless he was looking, and he never looked beyond his own reflection. By month 3, I had shares in 5 companies that had open contracts with Montgomery Tech. By month 5, I was controlling voting blocks, and no one suspected a thing because Vivian was too busy playing queen, and queens forget one simple truth. Castles built on lies always collapse from within. Meanwhile, my mother's side of the family, what little I had left, stayed silent. Cousins who once begged me for internships ghosted my messages. My godmother sent me a single email with 2 words, "Let go. Let go. Let go of what my bloodline, my birthright, my name." I wasn't clinging to a legacy. I was defending the truth. Vivian didn't steal out of desperation. She stole because she wanted to watch me fall and fall. I did. I fell through every layer of identity I thought I had. Daughter, air strategist. All stripped, all questioned. I found myself in a therapist's office one rainy Tuesday, not because I was breaking down, but because I needed to speak somewhere without being observed. "I'm not here for comfort," I told her. "I'm here to make sure I don't become what they say I am." She nodded, didn't flinch, just said, "And what do they say? That I'm cold, that I'm dangerous?" She leaned forward slightly. "And are you?" I didn't blink. Not yet. One evening I passed Whitford Hall from a distance. I didn't go in. I didn't even stop the car, but the windows were lit, and through one of them I saw her, Vivian, raising a glass. She looked radiant, perfect, untouchable. But light can't hide rot, and I knew what she didn't. That while she toasted to her stolen victory, I was already inside the walls she thought were hers. Not physically, financially, structurally, legally, the company she married into, it was hemorrhaging, and I was about to make sure the bandages never stuck. In the 6th month, an email came through from an anonymous account, no words, just one attachment, a copy of a conversation recorded between Vivian and Alden, our father's lawyer. She was instructing him on how to adjust the language in the will, not change it outright, just persuade our father to shift intentions, make it seem like Elena wasn't capable, use wellness as the excuse. It was treason in pearls. I didn't forward the file. I didn't leak it. Not yet. Because I didn't need a courtroom to win, I needed a boardroom, and I was almost there. The final piece was Alex. He wasn't stupid, just arrogant, and arrogance makes people sloppy. He posted a photo one day standing in front of the company's HQ, captioned, New chapter begins. I stared at the glass doors behind him. They reflected something far more interesting, me standing across the street unseen, unbothered, already 10 steps ahead. Because while he posed for photos, I was finalizing my position, not as a shadow, but as a silent stakeholder. Power doesn't arrive with trumpets. It walks in quietly, takes a seat in the back of the room, and waits until no one's looking before it moves the entire table. That's what I became. Not a ghost, not a victim, a stakeholder. One no one could see. My first official shares in Montgomery Tech were purchased through a holding firm called Alaris Capital, named, of course, after no one. Just a sound, elegant, vague, intentional. I built it through layers of trust funds and quiet reinvestments. Seed money from small wins I'd earned over the years, consulting fees, side ventures, even the dividend checks from companies. Vivienne didn't know I still had equity in. While she burned cash on gala gowns and rooftop dinners, I bought silence, one signature at a time. 3 quarters into her reign, Montgomery Tech was hemorrhaging cash revenue, flatlined their market confidence dropped below $20 a share. Employees whispered about late paychecks. Lawsuits hovered like storm clouds. HR violations failed. Acquisition deals, a whistleblower report quietly buried under confidentiality clauses. And in the midst of it all, Vivienne rebranded the lobby, a new logo, a rose gold font, a mission statement written by a PR intern. This isn't just business, she told a local magazine. It's personal. We're redefining legacy. I almost laughed when I read that legacy. She inherited a sinking ship and painted the sails pink. Alex didn't fare better. He had been promoted to Strategic Innovation Advisor, which in his case meant taking credit for ideas he didn't understand. I watched one of his press conferences. He mispronounced blockchain and claimed to be in talks with Tesla. Elon Musk liked the tweet, but I'm fairly sure it was sarcasm. Still, I never underestimated Alex. He wasn't stupid, he was distracted. Narcissists often are. I just needed to time the collapse, right? I started attending minor stakeholder meetings under proxy, sat beside real estate investors, pension fund managers, board financiers who didn't care who ran the company as long as the stock ticked green. I took notes, I asked questions, I slipped suggestions into proposals, small changes that looked harmless on paper, but gutted their infrastructure from the inside. Limit discretionary bonuses, restructure marketing under performance-based KPIs, mandate monthly expense reporting from leadership. Vivienne didn't notice because she didn't know how to read between the lines, and Alex didn't think he had to. He assumed no one in the room was smarter than him. He was wrong. On the 271st day since the will was read, I made my first real move, an emergency board meeting, not dramatic, just procedural request for leadership review, the memo said, pending structural performance reassessment. It was signed by 3 board members, none of whom had ever met me, but all of whom I controlled through quiet acquisitions and silent proxy votes. Vivienne called it sabotage. Alex called it a smear campaign. I called it strategy. The meeting was held on a Wednesday morning in the executive wing of Montgomery HQ. I didn't attend in person. That wasn't my role, not yet, but I did watch through a private video feed provided by one of the AV techs I tipped weeks prior. Money is loyal when faces aren't. Vivienne entered the room in white, always white, her armor. She smiled as she took her seat at the head of the table like it belonged to her. She crossed her legs, folded her hands, and waited for the room to worship her presence. But the room didn't. The agenda was dry, numbers, projections, losses. Then the questions began. Why had R&D funding been slashed? Why were customer churn rates up 40%? Why were 3 senior engineers quietly fired without cause? Vivienne answered, deflected, smiled wider. She blamed market disruptions. She blamed legacy inefficiencies, but not once did she blame herself, and no one bought it, especially not me. The vote didn't happen that day. It wasn't meant to. The real damage wasn't the outcome. It was the seed of doubt. The moment when the boardroom started to shift, when leaders began turning to each other, wondering if the emperor was dressed in PR slogans and little else. Vivienne left that meeting with her chin high and her teeth clenched. She'd won nothing, but she didn't know it yet. That night, she called Alex from her rooftop balcony. I know because I paid the bartender. She's behind this. Vivienne, hissed Elena. I know it. Alex laughed. Elena, she's gone. She's nobody. Vivienne went quiet. For a moment, then that's what scares me. I smiled into my wine glass. For the first time in months, she was right. The final play required patience and precision. So I waited, and while I waited, I bought one more proxy vote. 2 more seats on the board, a controlling interest in their cloud vendor. Then finally, I triggered a clause Alex himself had added during his first month as CEO, a liquidity clause meant to protect legacy shares from foreign buyouts. Unfortunately for him, he hadn't defined foreign. and Alaris Capital was registered in the Caymans. Oops. The next board meeting was not scheduled. It was summoned, critical reorganization. That's what the email said. Vivian didn't attend. She sent a statement. Alex arrived late, sweating through his collar. He smiled too wide, laughed too loud, tried to shake hands that didn't reach back. He thought he still had a vote. He didn't, because by then the majority was mine, and silence was the loudest seat in the room. At the end of the meeting, a resolution passed. Effective immediately, Alex Montgomery was removed as acting CEO. Vivian Montgomery's consulting contract was suspended, pending review. A new executive chair would be appointed, name confidential. For now, the press didn't get wind for 48 hours. When they did, the story ran wild. Montgomery Tech ousts power couple amidst board shakeup. Anonymous shareholder takes control in bold move. Vivienne's empire cracks. Elena Whitford unseen, unbothered. I didn't confirm anything. I didn't issue a statement. I didn't need to, because for the first time since my name was stolen from a piece of parchment behind mahogany doors, I was the one holding the pen. Power doesn't knock, it enters with keycards. You didn't know you gave it. The day of the coup arrived like any other sky-overcast calendar, full stock flat. But beneath that ordinary morning, war drums were thudding beneath the marble floors of Montgomery Tech HQ, and only I could hear them. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., special executive session, shareholder. Majority present. Vivian thought it was a budget review. Alex thought it was about restructuring HR. Both of them were wrong. It was about them. I arrived at 9:48, not through the main lobby where Vivian loved to perform for the cameras, but through the underground executive entrance, my access already pre-approved by the interim board. I wore black, not as a statement, but as a promise. Sleek wool coat, pinned hair, no jewelry, only silence and control. I walked past the receptionist who didn't recognize me, though I'd sat in that very building 5 years ago in closed-door planning sessions, sketching out product roadmaps Alex never understood. Funny how easy it is to forget the architect when you're too busy cutting ribbons on the front lawn. The elevator opened directly into the private boardroom level, muted gray walls, frosted glass, cold air conditioning humming like tension about to snap. One by one, the board members arrived. Some nodded at me. One gave me a quiet smile. No one questioned why I was seated at the head of the table. They knew they had voted. At 10:01, the doors opened. Vivian entered first. Her heels clicked against the tile like she owned the sound. Behind her was Alex, rumpled, already annoyed, holding a half-finished protein shake and clearly thinking about his lunch reservation. Vivian saw me and paused. Just slightly. Her smile froze, eyes narrowed, but she kept moving. "Ah," she said, voice like velvet lined with razor wire. "Elena?" What an unexpected guest. I didn't respond. Just folded my hands and nodded toward the empty seats across from me. Let them sit, let them believe. They still had time. The meeting began. Minutes were read, quarterlies referenced, legal updates acknowledged. Then came the agenda, item marked simply, Change of Executive Leadership, Resolution 7C. Vivian blinked. Alex sat up straighter. "What's this?" he asked, trying to chuckle. "I thought we were discussing Q2 forecasting." The room stayed silent. I looked to the board secretary. She clicked play, and from the speaker a voice filled the room, Vivian's voice, recorded in perfect clarity from her call with Alden. "He's old, Alden. Just nudge him. Elena doesn't need to be part of the legacy. Tell him she's unstable. He'll believe it. He always loved her too much anyway. Her voice, her words, her knife." Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. Alex dropped his shake. Silence, sharp, crushing, unforgiving. "I can explain," Vivian whispered. "No need," I said evenly. "It explains itself," I stood, not because I had to, but because history deserves posture. For those unaware, I continued. My name is Elena Whitford, daughter of Thomas Whitford, co-architect of the original Montgomery-Whitford merger proposal, and as of last month, controlling stakeholder of this board. I turned to Alex. "You were granted this company on the illusion that I would disappear quietly, that you could bury my name beneath marble and press releases." I turned to Vivian. "And you wore my legacy like a dress you never paid for." Her face flushed. "You can't do this. I already did." The motion passed 7-2. Effective immediately, Alex Montgomery was relieved of all executive duties. Vivian Montgomery was suspended indefinitely from board activity. A new interim executive chair was to be instated by vote unanimous. They voted in my favor. Vivian stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice fought to stay steady. "You don't understand what you've done." "I do," I replied calmly. "I've reminded the room that names on plaques mean nothing if the floor beneath them is hollow." Alex scoffed. "This is illegal. It's a coup." "No," I said. "It's a correction." He lunged forward, voice rising. "You're just a bitter girl with daddy issues." Security entered. 2 guards, neutral uniforms, eyes down. "I believe your key card has been revoked," I said. They escorted him out first. Vivian followed, muttering to herself. No one stopped them, no one defended them. The boardroom watched, not with pity, with relief. After they left, the secretary turned to me. Shall we proceed with the next item? I nodded and sat back down, this time as chairwoman, not interim permanent. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no headlines I authored, no cameras, only stillness, and one breath exhaled after 9 months of holding it. I had taken back everything they stole, without screaming, without scandal, without begging. I didn't knock. I rewrote the locks. Later that night, I stood at the edge of the old Whitford Hall property. The gate was closed. I didn't enter. I didn't need to. Because the real empire wasn't behind that iron. It was in the room where they thought I wouldn't dare return. And I had returned not just with proof, but with power. Vivian once said, "You can't win a game you weren't invited to." I smiled to myself beneath the moonlight. She was right. That's why I built my own board and made sure she couldn't sit at it. They wanted me gone, silent, shamed, forgotten. I gave them silence, but not surrender. And now, Mark, they remember me every time the elevator opens to the 42nd floor. Because my name isn't etched into the wall. It doesn't have to be. It's in the decisions, in the air. In the way people stop speaking when I walk in, not out of fear, but out of focus. That's how you reclaim something that was stolen. Not by screaming to get it back, but by becoming so undeniable it comes looking for you. After the coup, I didn't speak to Vivian. There was no letter, no confrontation, no camera flash apology. I left her exactly where I found her. In a borrowed world built on borrowed charm. Her name faded from the news cycle in less than a week. The press replaced her with another scandal, some heiress with a yacht and a rehab story. That's the thing about fame built on fraud. It doesn't echo, it evaporates. Alex for a while tried to fight back. He filed a lawsuit claiming I had orchestrated a hostile corporate seizure. The court dismissed it. Then he tried to rally old investors, but they were already investing with me. Eventually, he disappeared from public life. Rumors said he moved to the Caymans. One reporter caught a photo of him sitting alone in a beach bar drinking a melted cocktail through a paper straw. No one picked up the story. I didn't need to return the humiliation. They were doing it to themselves. Inside Montgomery Tech, now renamed WC Group, we didn't start by celebrating. We started by cleaning house. I brought back engineers who had been fired for being too outspoken. I reopened the shelved R&D division, greenlit 3 new prototypes that Vivian had rejected for being too boring, and doubled the cybersecurity team, and slowly, month by month, the company stopped sinking and started soaring. The stock rebounded, client retention tripled. The press cautiously at first began using my name again, but I never gave interviews. No TED Talks, no exposés, no glossy cover photos. Let Vivian be remembered for the spotlight she chased. I would be remembered for what I built when no one was looking. On the first anniversary of my takeover, I hosted a private dinner, not a gala, no photographers, just 12 people, 12 staffers from departments that had been gutted under Vivian's reign. I raised a glass not to legacy, but to survival. And then I made the only public gesture I've allowed myself since all this began. I established the Whitford Foundation. A grant program for women whose careers were derailed by nepotism, corporate sabotage, or wrongful termination. Each application was anonymous, each recipient selected by a panel of women who had rebuilt empires from ashes. The first grant went to a woman named Liana Torres. She had been fired from a media firm after exposing a cover-up and blacklisted ever since. 6 months after the grant, she launched her own platform. Today, she has 8 million followers. Her tagline, "I wasn't too loud, they were too comfortable." One day a letter arrived in a thick ivory envelope, no return address, just a name written in familiar cursive. Vivian inside was a single line. Was it worth it? I didn't respond, not because I didn't know the answer, but because she already did. I pass by Whitford Hall sometimes. The estate has been subdivided and sold off. What was once a mansion is now 3 private residences with modern glass kitchens and soulless interiors, the home I grew up in. It's now a Pilates studio. Sometimes I imagine my father walking those same halls, wondering how we went from antique oil portraits to lavender-scented yoga towels. I hope wherever he is, he knows the truth now, that the daughter he trusted was the one who kept her promise. I never returned to the hall, but I did build something better. We moved WC Group headquarters to a newly renovated tower in the city's creative district. The top floor is not a corner office, it's a design lab. Glass walls, whiteboards, engineers laughing. It doesn't look like power, but it is. And on the wall near the entrance, written in small silver letters, is our only quote. Built in silence, powered by clarity. Sometimes people ask me how I did it, how I stayed calm, how I didn't retaliate with fury, how I took everything without ever raising my voice. The truth is, I did raise my voice, just not the way they expected. I raised it with action, with presence, with precision. Every move was a sentence. every decision a declaration, and now the world reads me fluently. My name is Elena Whitford, no longer erased, no longer waiting to be chosen. I was never the golden girl. I was the one who remembered, who rebuilt, who returned without asking for a seat because I had already bought the building.